Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Come unwrap some holiday magic this season in Denver, where the lights are brighter and the shopping is grander. The shows are more spectacular, the trees taller, the festivities merrier. So come for your holiday traditions or make some new ones with your friends and family in the Mile High City, where the season feels a whole lot more wonderful. Discover great hotels and more things to do at milehighholidays.com.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hello, my dudes. Welcome to the first real episode of I've Been Thinking. I'm your host, Elena, and this is our special guest for the day.
I'm Allison. Alongside being the special guest, I'm also the super supportive roommate who's going to tell you that everything that you do is real. Mm-hmm. So you can't call this the first real episode.
Well, I mean, I had an introductory episode.
Oh, okay. Hashtag whatever.
So that was kind of the first episode.
Sure.
So, as I mentioned in the intro episode, today we are going to talk about accents, dialects, why they're important, why you should be proud of what you got. So, we're going to start out with kind of a little story from college, from my freshman year, our freshman year of college to be exact. August term, 2013. Mm-hmm. We were 7 whole years ago.
We were little babies.
We were small little children. And we were at this event that our school threw for us to kind of get to know each other, like all of our class. And we got sorted into teams because we were doing, it was like an Olympics thing or something, wasn't it, Al?
I don't remember what yesterday was, so I have no idea.
It was on the softball field. That's all I can tell you. It was on the softball field. Anyway, so we got sorted into teams, and I was kind of shy. I was actually pretty shy at that point in my life, I think. I hadn't blossomed yet, and this tall, skinny, adorable blonde girl walks up to me, and she said, "You talk like me." She said, "I'm going to stand over here with you because you talk like me." And that was one of the moments when I realized how important my accent was to, like, my identity and who I am and who I associate with in a way, like to the community that can be created with accent. So today we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so your point where it creates community, I think, is a great point, because when you got there, I know that you felt alone And I can't help but wonder how alone that girl felt as well. And so when you two were able to connect on something as
seemingly insignificant.
Yeah, as like the location that you're from, the culture that you all share, and then most importantly, the dialect that you share, it definitely creates this sense of camaraderie between you. You don't have to know anything about the other person because you're all of a sudden close enough just because of how you speak.
Right.
And I think that having that accent, you both have been probably made fun of, picked at, turned into a caricature, stereotyped, and having experienced those things, even though you experienced them separately in your life, just knowing that coming together, you all were able to already just have this like unspoken bond in a way.
Right. Yeah, it definitely having an accent or a dialect or, you know, both, whatever, they inherently create a sense of community, but then having those shared experiences of how you're treated or how you're whatever because of that accent also creates an even tighter knit sense of community, I think. And how those things affect you can be different depending on the community that you're a part of.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of talked about this when we weren't recording, and I kind of wish we got it because I feel like we made some great points. But, so, you can meet someone with the same dialect, and depending on your sense of identity and whether you're proud or ashamed of it or not, it can divide you from that community as well. So if you weren't who you are and she wasn't who she is, where you're both, you know, like connected to your culture, your heritage, proud of it in a sense.
Proud of where we're from.
Yeah, you all may have not made that bond if one of you had been ashamed or had been scared to embrace that.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminds me of another time when we were freshmen and I spoke up in a class and a girl came to me after class. She was an older girl, so, you know, like when you're a freshman, that's like, oh my gosh, this sophomore's talking to me. And she told me in her thick accent, she was like, that was really brave of you to say what you said in class, because I kind of stuck up for where I'm from a little bit. And she was like, I understand like how that feels. You know, I'm from Eastern Kentucky too, and it sucks to have people say things like that, so that was really brave of you to speak up. And that was really important, I think, in reassuring me, I guess, that I was heading the right direction, maybe, and identifying myself strongly with where I'm from.
Yeah, and it's really sad because there are people who are from Eastern Kentucky. I mean, there are people
wherever.
there are people
from everywhere.
California, the Pacific Northwest,
Alabama,
the Northeast, anywhere.
Yeah,
you can be from anywhere and just be ashamed of where you're from multiple reasons.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, there are people that we have both met that are so ashamed from being Eastern Kentucky, being from there, that they will just do everything they can to disassociate themselves with that culture, that heritage, the way that they speak. They'll do their best to lose that accent as much as they can. And so it's just really sad to know that someone out there has made you feel bad enough or ashamed enough of your upbringing, your identity as a whole, that you want to just completely recreate yourself.
Right. That also, I guess, reminds me of somebody else in college who asked me one time why I lose my accent when I am at school versus when I freshly come back from being home for a weekend. And he had a pretty strong Southern California Mexican influenced accent. And he asked me, he said, why don't you just let it go? And I was like, listen, I'm not doing that on purpose. When I'm away from home, it naturally like softens a little bit, you know? I'm not doing that on purpose. But he said, you need to be proud of it. You don't need to try to dampen it. And I really, I guess, appreciate that somebody who wasn't even from, you know, where I'm from had that insight. And I guess maybe it's because he might have a stronger sense of heritage and culture because his parents were Mexican, like from
First
Mexico.
generation.
Yeah, he's a first generation American. He has that stronger sense of where he's from, and he understands how important that is to your identity. And whereas a lot of us don't. We don't think of it in that way, or we think of it as a negative aspect of our identity, and we let it kind of be a divisive factor.
This goes a little bit deeper, this comment that I'm about to make. But, you know, America, the big melting pot. There are a lot of specifically white Americans that have lost their sense of culture. They don't know their history, where they're from.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, things like Ancestry.com and those, what is it, like 23andMe or something. I think that's why those are so popular, because we will figure out what mostly Western European countries that we're from, and then all of a sudden it's like you have this sense of identity that you've never had before. And I mean, being American is very unique, but knowing, you know, for you, like, knowing who you've come from, like Scotland, Ireland, those areas of the world, has so strongly influenced who you are. And I can't imagine how much more people would be proud of themselves if they knew what their, you know, their ancestors had gone through or came into, that kind of thing. But I think that we've lost that sense of identity as Americans because we're so homogenous.
Yes, yeah, I think so too. And I mean, just think how differently we could think about our accent or our dialect or the food that we eat or whatever if we thought about it in the context of our ancestors brought this here, you know, through, they overcame all of these things, they brought this here. This colloquialism that I use is, or the way I pronounce a word or whatever, is a direct consequence of them settling in a certain space, you know, and kind of merging with like Native people and other cultures and all of that, and you know, all of these things come together to create who we are today, which I just think is so interesting. And that, like, that is why I think that being proud of your accent and your dialect is so incredibly important, because it is such an inherently, or it's such an inherent part of where you've come from and how you got here. Like how you, as a human, literally ended up where you are right there. Your accent is a part of that. And where you came from and the people who came before you is a part of that.
And it definitely influences where you'll go.
Yeah, it does. And how you approach it, I think, influences where you'll go too. And then how you approach other people based on their accent, how you treat other people based on their accent. Build
a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So on the topic of how your identity kind of translates into how you'll build relationships as you go throughout your life, it makes me think of this time in my life when one of my close friends at the time moved up to the Northeast, Pittsburgh specifically, and I would go visit her a lot. And over time, I was able to become friends with her friends and have this, you know, nice little group. But it was really difficult establishing friendships with them on my terms, and I say that because they had this preconceived notion of who I was based off of the way that I spoke and where I was from, and probably, you know, the things that they learned about me from my friend. So what they saw was this girl with a thick Southern accent who was airheaded, you know, naive, spacey.
Right.
Anything that I said, they hardly would take it seriously. Almost always they would laugh at whatever I said, or they would make me repeat myself. So specifically, I don't know what we were talking about, but I said the word bean, and they made me repeat it over and over and over again because they were just so fascinated and entertained by the way that I spoke. And it was just so demeaning, and it really made me feel like there was only a certain person that I could be with them, that I couldn't be, like how I saw myself. Like, I see myself as an intelligent and sometimes well-spoken person. I mean, you know, I'll just say something off the cuff that just makes no sense and the words don't even fit together.
We all do.
But so the way that I saw myself, I wasn't really able to be that person with them.
Right.
Because they just, I mean, they almost pigeonholed me into this self-fulfilling prophecy where I was not allowed to be anyone else with them but the girl from the South who comes up occasionally to visit, and it's just a source of entertainment. It felt like I was on the Andy Griffith show, and I was Andy Griffith's, you know, sheriff. Barney. Yeah, I felt like I was Barney. His deputy, there we go. I felt like I was Barney the entire time I was there.
Yeah.
No matter what I said or did, never would be taken seriously. And so it greatly affected the way that I was able to develop relationships with people up there. And it ultimately led to the demise of my relationships with those people.
Reasonably so, I think.
Well, I doubt they'll ever listen to this, so that's good. But yeah, so, you know, your identity can make or break relationships with people who do not identify with it. So, you know, with your story where we're talking about it creates a sense of camaraderie, when you have two people with different backgrounds meeting, it can sometimes be like oil and water.
Yeah.
Especially when you are assumed to be someone that you're not. And it's like, you know, we hear people from New York or Boston talking, and sometimes they sound inherently angry. So we have to let go of that preconceived notion when we're speaking with them that they're not angry. That's just the way that they speak.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay, and it is unique to them. Just like they need to let go of preconceived notions about people from the South. And we're not airheads. We're not always being nice.
We're not all racist.
Yes, yeah. Just
we're not all a Family Guy character.
Yeah, we're
a Simpsons character.
Yeah, we're not hillbillies. Stereotypes obviously exist for a reason.
Yes.
They exist because there's some sort of basis there.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that those things don't exist.
Or that those things, well, being a racist isn't good, but like being a quote-unquote hillbilly or something, like that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like that's a fine thing to be.
It's a more fun way of life.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just an interesting concept to me that always has me thinking about the way people perceive me. And so in some cases that has led to me, you can probably hear my dog snoring in the back. I apologize. But it has led to me kind of rethinking the way in which I introduce myself in new relationships. When we have someone who is higher up in the chain of command in the company that I work for come to visit us, I really have to kind of hide that part of my identity because I understand from past interactions how people will perceive me. So I have to almost create this persona so they don't write me off.
Right.
And that's really frustrating because at the same time you want to be proud of who you are and where you're from and the way you speak and act. It's almost like code switching in a way, and it doesn't always have to be with your dialect, but just your behavior in general. So you'll totally switch to a different person, like your professional Allison versus your Allison who maybe just had 5 White Claws.
Yeah.
Or
Allison who just woke up and refuses to get out of bed.
Yeah, I mean, those are all different people in one body.
They are.
And I'm like, oh.
Oh.
Multiple personality disorder? Just kidding. Just kidding. I don't think it works that way.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you say that, though, and how important it can be to, like, code switch in the sense that for, one part of your life, you're this person who may have a thicker accent or who may use those colloquialisms. Like when I worked in sales, if a certain kind of person walked in the door, like in retail sales, when a certain kind of person walked in the door, I would know, okay, let myself have a more country accent, or like let it be more of a drawl, and that person would feel more comfortable with me, or like don't lay that on so thick so that person doesn't feel uncomfortable with this person that they don't relate to,
Yeah.
But I think that just kind of exemplifies why representation of, like, in general matters, like, just across the board. But, like, when you see somebody with your accent who speaks like you, who uses the colloquialisms that you do, all of those things, when you see that person in a position of power or a position of respect or whatever that is, that makes you feel more legitimate, I think.
Yeah, it legitimizes your identity.
Yeah.
And your feelings. And you're right, representation really does matter.
Right.
And off the top of my head, I don't know if I can think of any, TV show, radio show, movie, maybe other than The Blind Side, I guess, where there's like a strong Southern female lead.
Yeah.
So shout out Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, no
one
kidding.
Badass woman. But yeah, it's like, if you think about it, a lot of the depictions of like Southern women
are caricatures.
Yeah,
like you
I'm
said.
thinking of what is that? Ricky Bobby.
Oh yeah, Talladega Nights.
Yeah, and the wife in that
is just like a bimbo blonde,
airheaded, completely disregards other identities and experiences, and just
names the kids Walker and Texas Ranger.
Yeah, and just is 100% people look at her and they're like, dear God, this is every white Southern woman.
Right.
And so there are so many examples of those caricatures.
Or they think that like every Southern grandma is Aunt B on Andy Griffith. We're really on an Andy kick right now.
I mean, it's true. It's a good show.
It is a good show. Or like how you think that every person from California is a surfer dude.
And they have that vocal fry.
Yeah, well, that's a valley girl.
Well, isn't California a valley?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, no, valley girl is like when you're from the valley in LA and you talk like that, like those girls.
So does California not have that all over the place?
No, dummy.
Well, there I go, be an example of something you don't want to be, the person you don't want to be.
Well, I was gonna say like how surfer dudes are like Chad on Instagram, and they're like, dude.
Please follow him, by the way.
Chad goes deep.
Chad goes deep. He really does.
He is funny. Or like how, like the Simpsons depicted the Pacific Northwest as like lesbians and hipsters in that one episode where Marge becomes a competitive
Like an outdoors woman,
yeah, and throws axes and stuff. Like, that's not all it is.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
I've been there. I can tell you. I went to a freaking hippie town, but still.
So, exactly. I mean, stereotypes exist for a reason. So
yeah, they exist to an extent, but even in that hippie town, like, I can tell you that's not all it is.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, but it is, I think that one of the moments, two of the most important moments to me feeling represented were three. Okay, these are really brief, and they're all authors. They all have to do with writing.
Okay.
Silas House spoke at Transy at our undergrad one time, and I just was in awe. Little 18-year-old me was in awe of this man who's standing on that stage and speaks like me, and is from very close to where I'm from. And, you know, he's up there, so I could be up there one day. Similarly, I recently went to a talk with some authors who collaborated on a book. And this woman, she wrote a short story for this book. This was like 5 out of the dozen or whatever authors who all compiled a book together out of short stories, you know. And she read an excerpt of her piece, and it was the most accurate to anything I've ever heard as to how I grew up and how I looked at my grandmother, my mama, my mom's mom. You know, that was the most accurate description, portrayal of how I had experienced, you know, that part of my life. And then I think the third time I felt the most represented was a book that I read, and I think that this is going to be one of our book club books, but it's called The Glass Castle.
Oh, yeah, you've mentioned it.
Yeah, and it is this absolutely insane family, and the dad's from West Virginia and the mom's from like Texas or something, and it's a memoir and it's all true, but the family being absolutely batcrap crazy isn't what reminded me of, you know, my family. But it was how she experienced life much less privileged than I did. Like, she had a lot of things that she overcame in her life. But some of the experiences that she had as like a young girl and as a teenager, those are the closest, or her descriptions of that in the book were the closest things I've ever experienced to seeing things that I've experienced in life. You know, and that was just really, really important to me, that I got to read a book that was about somebody who had lived similar things.
Similar experiences.
Yeah. So I just think that, you know, ultimately, it just really is important that we start to look at accent as
a positive
defining characteristic. That's exactly what I was trying to articulate.
I'm thankful we can kind of like finish each other's thoughts in a way.
Yeah, finish each other's sandwiches.
Yeah. So one of Elena's biggest pet peeves is having people interrupt her.
It's true.
And I appreciate that about her, because I think that it kind of goes along with the part of her personality that's like very strong, like, don't speak over me, I'm an independent person.
I demand respect.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a little out of hand, but I think that we've gotten to the point in our relationship where I can do that and it doesn't bother her as much as it might if somebody else did it, especially because usually we're on the same wavelength.
It's scary sometimes.
Yeah, so I think that I speak for the both of us when I say, like, to the people who are listening to us ramble about this, 100% encourage you to embrace the parts of your identity that make you unique, and don't let those go. But also, don't feel guilty if you have to do something like code switch in order to be taken seriously, in a professional sense.
Yeah.
You know, that's okay too. Like, there's no wrong way to be yourself, unless yourself is a serial killer and you're murdering
let's
everyone.
not do
Let's
that.
not do that. Don't be that person.
No.
But I mean, yeah, I think that we encourage you to embrace your identity and at the same time understand why it's unique and why you shouldn't let it go.
Exactly.
But be realistic and know that there are parts of your identity that you may have to change sometimes in order to be successful. I mean, it's just like a double-edged sword.
It is. And I mean, it sucks that there's parts of ourselves that at some point we have to like hide sometimes a little bit or minimize.
Yeah, minimize.
Yeah, minimize. It's like tabs on a computer. Sometimes you have to minimize your accent or whatever to be taken seriously, you know, whatever it is. But also keep in mind that sometimes those sacrifices that you make to get there, once you get to the top, you can frickin' rock your accent and you can be the person that one day a little girl looks at and is like, well, that doctor, that lawyer, the president talks like me. So I can do those things too. Or that little boy, or, you know, whatever. Or that 18-year-old girl.
Yeah, now that you say that, I can't help but wonder, maybe if we just 100% embrace ourselves from the get-go, if we'll get further with more respect.
Revolutionary.
I mean, honestly, it's...
No, it actually is.
It's just so hard to navigate.
It is.
Life in general.
Life's it's a minefield.
It is.
A battlefield.
I guess maybe I take back what I say about
Well,
hide parts of yourself. I guess
you don't have to, but I think the important thing is that you judge your circumstances and your journey for yourself. And you make your decisions for yourself. You don't let somebody else make your decisions for you.
Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed.
Yes, don't let anyone make you feel ashamed. And you find out who you are and you just embrace that. And if that includes sometimes having to minimize things, that's okay. Should you have to? In a perfect world, no. But if sometimes you have to minimize things, like that's okay. But
it's understandable.
Yeah, it's understandable. But ultimately, be proud of who you are.
I guess that's like the theme of this
that's
whole...
the theme here, is that your accent and your dialect is an inherent part of you. And it's the culmination of everyone who came before you. And it is just this really...
it's a beautiful part of your identity.
It's a beautiful part of your identity. And you should try, at least, to love that about yourself.
So, that's a beautiful note to end this episode on.
It's true, it is.
But can I just add, like, a behind-the-scenes moment?
Okay, go ahead.
This is just, like, a very last question to leave for our listeners, but dogs and accents... Do dogs have accents?
No, cows do.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't, and that's weird. But do dogs have accents?
Probably.
Is it determined or dependent upon their breed?
Or their owner?
Yeah, do they? Because there's, dogs that understand Spanish or German as opposed to English. What if there are different dialects of Spanish and German that they don't understand?
I mean, probably. That's so interesting, dude.
What if you have, like, a speech impediment and you speak English and you speak to your dog, and then somebody else says the same thing to your dog, but because they don't hear it with the impediment, they don't understand it?
Yeah.
Ugh, right. That's a whole nother episode.
That's a lot.
We probably don't know anyone that's an expert on the topic, so that's going to be like a theoretical discussion.
Yeah, that's something for us. Maybe we'll bring that to the Instagram and have like a discussion about it on there. Yeah. We'll be looking out for that, dudes.
Thank you for listening to us ramble.
Yeah.
Definitely get with us. Let us know. Did we say anything that
resonated with you? Did we say, or
did we literally say nothing
important at all.
sensible?
Yeah, definitely give us some feedback. Follow me on Instagram at I've Been Thinking Pod. Like I said in the introductory episode, I'm not so sure about Twitter. We'll see about that one day.
Twitter effing sucks.
Yeah, Twitter's not my cup of tea.
And let's end on that note. Goodbye, Twitter.
Well, we will be back. Allison won't be back for a while because she's having back surgery. But we will be around. And, yeah, that's that, folks. I'm working on it. We're learning a lot. Allison will be a consistent, probably pretty consistent special guest. She'll be around here quite a bit. But yeah, just bear with us as we learn, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, dudes.
Thanks so much. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Waiting to buy a home? The Churchill Mortgage team says now is a great time to buy. Waiting could be a costly mistake because when rates drop, new home buyers will flood the market, driving up home prices. Go to churchillmortgage.com for your free analysis and see how home values can outpace rates to help you build wealth over time faster. This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLS ConsumerAccess.org. Equal Housing Lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027.